Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Realtor Lore here, your favorite realtor in the Milwaukee, Wisconsin market. And as you might have seen or heard, the hot topic in today's real estate world is the NAR, National Association of Realtors Commission Lawsuit Settlement. And it's been a while since I made a new video, but I had to make this one because a lot of my clients, potential clients, friends, family have been asking me, hey, what do I need to know about this? What's the truth? What are the facts? And so today we're going to unpack this for you. Whether you're thinking about buying a home or selling a home in the future, how does this affect you moving forward? So don't miss out on this video. All right, so let's begin. And this video will be very thorough. I'll try to educate you as much as I can on what I know about it and how it will affect you. And there will be a table of contents for the video down below that you can pick the different topics as I talk about them. So whatever you're interested in hearing about, what you care about, feel free to skip ahead to those parts and only watch those that you care about. Or if you want to watch the whole thing, have at it. So how did all of this begin? Well, there were two lawsuits to begin with, one in the state of Missouri and one in Illinois. And one of the lawsuits filed claimed that the NAR, along with large major brokerages in that state, were colluding together to inflate and keep real estate commissions high. And so the other lawsuit claimed that why should sellers have to pay for a buyer agent's commission? They felt that it was unfair for a seller to pay for the cost of a buyer's agent who ultimately would come into the picture and negotiate against that seller. So that did not make sense to the seller. And also, I believe some of this was also because it wasn't clearly disclosed to the seller that a portion of the commission that he was paying to the listing brokerage would be shared to the buyer agent side. So there was some confusion about that. And so that's why these lawsuits came about. Okay, so let's dive into these claims. Are they accurate? And the first claim is that NAR, along with major brokerages and real estate agents, are colluding to keep commissions artificially high. Is there truth to this? Well, as a member of the NAR, National Association of Realtors, we are not even allowed to talk amongst each other, realtors, about commissions in our markets. This is because it is highly frowned upon, because that is clearly colluding, right? So why would we even put ourselves in that type of situation? Now, there's also no such thing as a standard commission rate. And the media has been pushing around that, 6% has always been the standard so-called commission rate that agents charge. Well, the fact is that there is no standard. NAR, our brokerages, do not have any guidelines that say, hey guys, you as agents, you need to charge X%. That's our standard. No, there's no such thing. We're free to charge, whatever we can negotiate with sellers, right? And at the same time, sellers are free to interview as many agents, as many brokerages as they want to find the right brokerage, the right listing agent to help them sell their home. And in fact, there are a number of flat fee or limited service brokers out there that essentially all they do is list a seller's property in the MLS for a couple $100, and that's it. But essentially, you as a consumer, as a seller, need to understand that you are paying for what you get, right? So if you don't need all the services, all the bells and whistles, somebody to hold your hand through the whole thing, help you negotiate, handle the showings, have strangers come in your house, things like that, then hey, you might, be able to choose a lower commission place. Or, if you want the full white glove service, you want the hands off, you want the agent to do everything for you and get you the most money that you can for your home when you're selling it, then yeah, you probably want to pay that commission that the agent is asking for, depending on, what they're going to offer you, right? What kind of services, what kind of expertise does this agent have? What's their track record like? What's their experience? And so you are essentially paying for what you get, right? So you're free to make those decisions as a consumer. So just as a quick example, if you're trying to sell your home to get top dollar for it, you probably would not want to hire an agent that the majority of their business, the majority of their expertise, their experience is selling vacant land. Why would you hire that type of agent? Because they don't have what you need to help you with your situation. So again, every client situation is different, and the way that different agents work, right? Their communication style. You want to hire somebody who's you believe has the skills, has the experience, the expertise to help you get the most for the commission that you're paying. Okay, let's move on to claim number 2, that sellers do not want to pay a co-broke commission for the cost of a buyer's agent. So the purpose of a co-broke commission, first of all, has always been that it would be advertised on the MLS for buyer agents to see how much a seller was willing to offer a buyer agent to bring their buyer to successfully purchase that seller's home. So it was an incentive for buyer agents to bring their buyers into the doors of sellers, so that, the more activity there will be, there's a higher chance that this seller could potentially sell their home. Now, agents are supposed to work in the best interest of their clients, right? So whether it's a buyer or a seller, an agent is not supposed to steer their clients to a certain home based solely on the amount of co-broke being offered. So for example, if a co-broke offer commission was very low or even $0, it happens, as an agent who is working for a buyer, you shouldn't be telling your client, let's not, we should avoid these, or purposely, right, avoid showing them to your buyer. Now, on a different scenario, if your buyer, has flat out told you that, hey, I don't have the funds to pay you your buyer agent commission if you help me find a home. So let us avoid seeing any homes where, the seller is not covering your co-broke commission. Now, because of this is a specific set of instructions that your client has told you, hey, now you have been instructed to avoid those homes. So it's different in that case if your client is telling you, right? Whereas before, if you weren't giving those instructions and you were just purposely kind of avoiding those lower commission co-broke homes, well, then that is looked down upon as steering a client away from certain homes. And in those situations where, the commission co-broke might be low or even $0, you have to have the conversation with the buyer and say, hey, Mr. Buyer, by the way, for this specific listing, just so you know, the seller is not offering any co-broke commission, $0, or a very low amount of commission, right? So whenever you're working with a buyer, you should have a pre-negotiated buyer agent commission anyway, right? So if there is a gap between what's being offered by the seller and that a pre-negotiated amount, well, then you should be bringing it up to your buyer and saying, hey, just so you know, you may have to make up the difference if the seller is not willing to pay that difference to me as your buyer agent. So as long as your buyer knows upfront that, hey, that might be a possibility, and they still want to go look at it, well then, they're fully aware of what's going on, right? So that's all you can do in that type of situation. So there is a second argument part of this lawsuit as well that I touched on a little bit earlier, and that is about why is it the seller's responsibility to pay for both commissions, the listing agent as well as the co-broke commission offer to the buyer's agent? Because essentially what happens is the seller on the closing settlement statement, right? When you look at that document, typically you will see that the commissions are taken from the seller's profit, right? And so it'll be paid out to the listing broker, and then the listing broker shares some of that commission, the co-broke offer, with the buyer's agent. That gets cut from the seller. Now, however, who's actually funding the deal, right? Who's actually bringing the funds? Well, it's still the buyer at the end of the day. The buyer, whether it's a loan or cash, that's, the money to close the deal, to get it done, the ultimate goal of a seller and the ultimate goal of the buyer to buy a home it's going to come from the buyer. So technically, I mean, you could argue in circles that the buyer is paying for the commissions as well. And of course, some sellers are like, well, that's not fair that I'm paying for a buyer's agent to come in and negotiate against me. Now, what are the alternatives, right? What options does a buyer have if they're being forced to pay for their own buyer agent? Well, number one, of course, they could pay for their own agent if they have the funds. And that's the big elephant in the room, right? A lot of buyers out there may not be in a financial position where they can afford to pay for their own buyer agent commission. And so they may not be able to buy a home without the help of a seller to cover the buyer agent's commission. Because, you think about down payment, anywhere from 3% to 20%. And then closing costs is about 3% on top of that. So that's a lot of money to have saved up already in order to buy a home. And now if a buyer has to now bring in an additional 3%, or whatever, 2, whatever, percent towards the buyer agent that they're going to hire, well, that's even more money out of pocket that they're going to lose. So what is a buyer's options now if they cannot afford to pay for their own buyer agent commission? Well, the options available to a buyer would then choose to go unrepresented. So basically buy a home without an agent, which is probably a terrible idea because they're essentially negotiating against a seller who has an agent, who is a professional, who knows the ins and outs of the real estate world. How are you as a buyer going to compete against that? How are you making sure that you get the better terms? You're looking out for who's going to look out for you, that you're buying a home that is, in good shape, that is good for your family. So there's some challenges there. Now, alternatively, a buyer could just go directly and use the listing agent as well. So they would hire the listing agent as their buyer agent too. And in a way, if they do that, well, the listing agent's already getting compensated. So no big deal. Buyer doesn't have to pay them, correct? But in some states, this is illegal. In some states, the listing agent cannot represent both parties. In Wisconsin, it's completely legal. But now the listing agent, because they're double ending the deal, they actually have to be neutral in the transaction, meaning that they cannot at any point, show favoritism to one party or the other. They have to be fair. They have to be neutral. And if either party, the buyer or the seller, feels that, this listing agent seems like, or the agent, right, seems to be favoring the listing, the seller, or the buyer, well, that could open you up as an agent or even as a seller to all kinds of lawsuit, right? Improper representation, right? So we're going to be kind of having to navigate through these changes coming here. So it's going to be pretty interesting how this is going to play out. And, there's going to be, of course, that doesn't mean that, for the sellers, it doesn't mean that you can't offer to pay buyer agent commission anymore. You're not allowed to offer that co-broker commission anymore. You still can. You just have to go about it a different way. Now, real quick, if you're a seller and you're thinking that you're going to save yourself some money, earn a little bit more cash in your pocket from the sale by not offering a buyer agent co-broker commission, well, you do realize that if you have to buy another home after you sell yours, well, now you are a buyer. Now you're on the other side of the table. So you might have to so-called take that savings that you have and now go pay for your own buyer agent. So, that savings is very short-lived. Okay, so what is the settlement about? Well, the NAR, National Association of Realtors, agreed to a settlement offer of $418 million to be released from this lawsuit, right? So if you're an individual realtor, now you are released from the liability of this lawsuit. And however, the major brokerages themselves, they are still currently negotiating their own settlements. So again, this isn't exactly finalized yet. While the NAR has made this offer of settlement, the Department of Justice still has to weigh in on it and approve it. So likely there could be other changes, small tweaks that come about once everything is said and done. So don't take this video in this current time as everything is gospel, right? So another major change that is coming about because of this settlement is now that the NAR has decided that the commission offer to co-broke to a buyer's agent will no longer be advertised in the MLS. So what does that mean? Well, that means that agents can no longer just look up how much a seller is willing to offer a buyer agent commission. What's the point of this, right? Why does this matter? Well, what this will try to do is create an open dialogue for both sellers and buyers to be able to negotiate the buyer agent commission. And so what does that mean? Well, it means if you are a seller trying to sell your home, right? You're working with your listing agent and you've negotiated the commission that you're going to pay your listing agent, right? Next question becomes, well, Mr. Seller, would you be open to offering a buyer agent commission, co-broke commission, for a buyer agent who brings a buyer? And you as a seller, you could be like, $0. You could be, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6%, whatever. And, you are no longer as a listing agent. You can't just put it in the MLS anymore. You can't communicate it that way anymore. So on the flip side, if you're a buyer agent and you're looking at listings, you will now have to communicate with the listing agent to determine, hey, I'm interested in 1234 Main Street. Just checking what's the co-broke commission that your seller's offering. And of course, it might be 0, 1, 2, 3, 4%, whatever. And so buyer agent now goes back to their buyer and says, oh, hey, so this listing is offering, the seller's offering this much in buyer agent compensation. And so now as the buyer on the end here, you're like, well, does that offer, does that cover what I've pre-negotiated with my buyer agent, right? And if it doesn't, then you may, as a buyer, have to make up that difference. And that could be 100% of that, right? If the seller's like, no, I'm not providing anything. So you as a buyer now, you're negotiating your own buyer agent's commission, potentially the coverage of it, right? You could ask the seller to cover that for you. So even if the buyer agent comes back to you and says, oh, they're offering $0. Well, that doesn't mean that you can't write in your offer, you can't request as part of your terms and conditions and of your offer that you would like the seller to cover your buyer agent's commission, right? Of course, the seller might be like, okay, sure, I'll do it. Or they might be like, nah, I'm only gonna do this, right? So they might do 50%, they might do, 75%. So whatever, right? So you as a buyer now and a seller, commission now becomes more openly negotiable for everyone. So that's the purpose of this change moving forward. So where this change can potentially hurt you as a buyer is if you're the buyer that I mentioned earlier who does not have the funds to cover your own buyer agent commission. Then it can become a challenge for you to purchase a home because now you have to specifically look for homes or negotiate where a seller is willing to cover the buyer agent commission. And of course, if you're a VA veteran and you're using a VA loan, well, there has to be some changes coming. Otherwise, a VA using a VA loan will not be able to pay their buyer agent any type of commission or fee because this is illegal per VA loans currently as it is. The other major change coming for buyers is that they should be aware that going forward, they will be expected to sign a buyer agency agreement right away. It's going to be mandatory. There's going to be no way around this if you as a buyer want to see a home. And this buyer agency agreement, it has always actually been around, but it was never required, never mandatory to be presented immediately upon the first meeting between an agent and a buyer. And while it has always been good practice in the real estate agent world to present this document as soon as possible, because what it does is basically it sets the working expectations between a client and an agent, helps buyers to understand, what the process is like to purchase a home with an agent, right? And it spells out things like, hey, how long is this working relationship going to be for? What services am I as your agent going to be offering you? What expectations are expected of me as a buyer to you, Mr. Agent? And also, that it's an exclusive agreement that, you as a buyer will not be, agent hopping. You won't be unloyal to your agent and go work with other agents, because essentially, if you don't know, real estate agents only get paid when buyers actually close on a home. And so for a real estate agent to spend, their time, their gas, time away from their families, Saturdays, weekends, whatever, weeknights, to go show homes over and over and over to buyers, and only for that buyer to end up using another agent or going directly with the listing agent, it's just not, a very cool way to handle the situation, right? So buyers need to understand that, hey, there's a process to buying a home. There's a process to working with a real estate agent. So the new change is that, again, this document, this buyer agency agreement, is going to be mandatory to be presented immediately. It was in the past required or recommended that it be presented as soon as possible in the working relationship. But the reality was that a lot of agents didn't feel comfortable presenting it to buyers right away upon the first meeting, right? Imagine if you have a new buyer who's super eager to buy a home, start their journey, look at homes. They just got pre-approved, and you slap down this buyer agency contract in front of them, and they're reading through and it says, oh, exclusive agent agreement. Some buyers have a certain way they feel about being trapped, being locked into exclusive contract, right? Buyers who don't understand the process. Maybe agents don't know how to explain it properly. So buyers will tend to shy away from that agent, maybe. They won't want to sign it, and then they might just go find a different agent. And of course, buyers and buyer agents don't like to have that happen, right? They want to have built some kind of relationship with the potential buyer first before they present this document, right? This contract agreement, so that, hey, there is some kind of work history, some kind of trial period, right? To see if it works out between the two before either party agrees to commit to each other. But this new change, this new mandatory requirement, it's going to be presented right away for all buyers. So now buyers have no alternatives. If they go to another agent, same thing's going to happen to them. They're going to see that mandatory buyer agent agreement right away. And so there's going to be no workarounds. So this is actually good for both sides, to be quite honest with you. I mean, for buyer agents, this makes it clear. All the agents are playing in the same field now. All agents have to do the same thing, so that buyers, can't just go around them to go to another agent who will not require or present that document right away. If it's going to be mandatory required now by the NAR, all buyers are going to see it, regardless of which agent they talk to. So, of course, you as a buyer, when you're looking to hire a real estate agent, you want to look for the right agent that's going to fit with you. And it might be very tough for you, right? Because you never met this person before. Probably you're going to interview with them. You're going to want to ask certain questions. You haven't exactly, experienced what the working relationship will be like. You don't know if this agent is going to be responsive. You don't know what their work style, their communication style is going to be like. But you can at least ask the questions about, hey, this is my situation. What is your expertise? What is your experience? What can you help me with? Why should I hire you? Why should I pay you the commission you're asking for? And if I don't have the money as a buyer, do you have strategies? Do you have ways that we can successfully buy a house without me having to pay that commission for you? And if you're hiring a good agent, they should be able to answer all those questions for you. They should be able to navigate and guide you to your goal of buying a home. Okay, so how do these changes affect sellers? Well, if you were a seller in a state that you already had full control over what you wanted to pay a listing agent brokerage, as well as what you wanted to share, if you wanted to share anything with a buyer agent that were to bring you a buyer, that co-broke commission, well, nothing really changes for you. You still have control of everything. Now, like I mentioned earlier, in some states, it might not have been as clear. The sellers didn't really have control over that co-broke commission. So now going forward with the new changes, well, everyone will have the opportunity to decide what they want to do on the seller side, right? And if you're a seller, and even if you say 0% or whatever, $0 or whatever you want to do, just because that's what you put down, I mean, don't be surprised now going forward if you receive an offer from a buyer who is going to negotiate you on that buyer agency commission. Because now you might start seeing that a lot more often. So even if you're providing some type of compensation to a buyer agent commission, it might not be enough for that buyer to cover their buyer agent commission. So they're going to ask you for assistance. And so be prepared for that, right? Going forward. And again, it'll be entirely up to you what you want to do. So I hope that by watching this video, you've learned a couple things to help you distinguish the difference between facts and the media's clickbait article headlines, such as, oh, the death of the standard 6% commission is here, because as you just learned, there was never really a standard 6% commission. Or if you've heard that, oh, those greedy real estate agent commissions are coming down, that now means that home prices are all of a sudden going to be more affordable. Well, I hate to break it to you, but real estate commissions coming down probably really has little effect on home affordability or interest rates. We all know that right now there is a severe lack of housing inventory. There's way more buyers out there than there are sellers. And if you are a home buyer, be prepared to see more disclosures up front when you're meeting the agent for the first time, because there's going to be changes coming, right? You know, before you get out there to even start looking at homes, take the time to meet with an agent, to learn, you know, what their experience is, what their expertise is, how can they help you do what you want to do, what is your goal. And so once you have that clearly defined, and once you seem to have like, okay, I think this is the agent for me, now you can go out there and hopefully they can actually deliver, and they help you to find that home that you're looking for. Or if you're selling, of course, you know, hopefully they can help you sell for the price that you want. Lastly, of course, these changes are not officially confirmed yet. So the Department of Justice, like I mentioned, still has to confirm all these changes. So there's probably some tweaks coming still. And of course, if you have questions about commissions, if you have questions about this lawsuit settlement, any other questions you want to ask, send them over to me. Direct message me, comment below, send me an email. If you're thinking of selling or buying, how does this impact you? Well, reach out to me. Be happy to help you to, you know, navigate, guide you through that experience, you know, whatever you're trying to do. So the best way, of course, stay tuned, subscribe if you haven't, so that you get updated on future videos just like this one. I'll see you in the next one. Thank you for watching.